take me to your river.
Because it's like, we should have that playing in the background to like set the mood.
Why don't we have background music for these? Drop a comment below if you think background music would be distracting or cool. Actually, I know for a fact for me it would be distracting because I would be singing.
But for like a few minutes before, while we're waiting for people to log in,
yeah, like background, like when people come into like a theater for a show and it's like the music playing before the show starts.
Yeah, like pre-elevator music.
We could do different sounds and do like name this sound, like laughing gulls versus I don't know, a pelican or a heron or something.
I think with music we have some copyright issues.
Okay, animal sounds though. Nobody. Yeah, I like that. So
do like waves
video about,
when
name that animal with just the sound. I did some bobcat though, and I want to make that one.
Okay.
Like with my voice.
Go ahead, let's hear it now.
Right now, I meant in the future. Okay. It sounds like a child mixed with a feral cat. And it woke me up. It woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was wandering around outside trying to find the bobcat because I knew it was there and it was calling to me.
Have you ever heard like a snorting noise when you are out? I keep thinking that it's like a male deer, but it's very odd.
We do have pigs here. We did. On John's Island we do. Okay, sorry.
We don't. There are no hogs on this island.
Okay. Then I don't know if it's here that I know.
Swim across the title.
If one is that,
there are Florida panthers on Kiawah Island. So, but it hasn't. But nobody's actually seen it. So I don't know.
it's supposed to be like a pet that got let out.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's probably living its best life now.
All right, are we ready? Let's talk about some things.
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's talk about some sea life. So you ladies introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Alyssa.
And I'm Alex.
And we are Alyssa and Alex. And we're here to answer some of your questions about yesterday's video, the Let's See video.
All right, ladies, to start us off, we had some questions about what kind of animals you're going to find living on the beach.
Great question. So yesterday I mentioned that the beach is kind of a desolate ecosystem, meaning we don't see a lot of living things in that ecosystem. For the most part, what we see are either dead animals, or we might see animals moving around on that ecosystem, but they don't spend a ton of time there. So you will, of course, see, for example, birds on the beach. We've got lots of different shorebirds. We've got plovers, we've got pipers, we've got seagulls, which are not a thing, by the way. We've got gulls, and we've got pelicans, all kinds of other birds that might be using that beach ecosystem as they look for food. But they're not going to be spending a significant amount of time there, obviously, because the water is constantly changing that ecosystem. But there are animals you can find in the intertidal zone, which is going to be in between where the high and the low tide is as it moves back and forth. But most of these animals are either going to move with the water, or when that water falls back and the beach is exposed to the sun, they're going to burrow down deep into the sand where there's actually some water for them available. I have this great resource here called Living Beaches. This is an example of a guidebook, and it's something that naturalists love to use if you're outside and you don't know about something that you found. A guidebook is going to be a great resource for you because it's got pictures and descriptions of different types of organisms or plants that you might find. And some of the ones we might find on our beach, one that I really like are these little guys. These are called coquina clams. They're very pretty and very colorful, and a lot of times when the tide is going in and out, as the water falls back, you can actually see these guys begin to burrow and dig their way down into the sand. So you're not going to see them on the surface. That would be too exposed, too much, no cover for them, and too much sunlight, but they are underneath the sand. Another one that you can find, we've got all kinds of different varieties of worms, straw worms or parchment tube worms, and a lot of times you'll actually just see these little tubes sticking up out of the surface of the water, or we're going to turn the page. You might find remnants of them. They actually make their own tube, kind of made of a special saliva and sand, and they'll actually leave that behind. But again, these guys are going to be underneath the sand, so they're going to be below the surface. You're not necessarily going to see them crawling around on the beach. Another animal here that we have a ton of and lots of evidence that they are there are ghost shrimp. And most of the time, you don't actually see the ghost shrimp, which is what this little guy looks like. He's going to be buried deep below the sand. You are going to see their holes, though, which just look like someone took a little needle and poked a hole in the sand. And you'll find a lot of their scat around the entrance of that hole. And scat, as we discussed yesterday, is just another word for poop. Looks kind of like chocolate sprinkles, but do not eat them, please. Last but not least, one that I know that a lot of people love to find here on our beaches, and that you can find if you know what to look for, are sand dollars. So right here you can see a living sand dollar kind of burrowing himself in the sand. These guys will try to move with the water, but a lot of times when the tide goes out, they just kind of dig themselves just far enough below the sand to get in contact with that wet sand. And we do have these guys on our beaches as well. So there are some living residents of our beaches, but they're going to use the cover of the sand and actually try to dig themselves below to protect themselves and make sure that they don't dry out or get into too much contact with the sun.
That's very interesting. So while we're kind of talking about residents that you might find on the beach, what are some residents that we may find in the sand dunes?
So some things that you might find there would be obviously our deer. They love to graze through that area. There's a lot of grasses that are there, grasses and sedges and bushes as well. And so they're going to graze through there. We also have some rabbits that live out there. We also have a gray fox that occasionally go out there as well, looking for an easy meal. Raccoons, possum. We also have ghost crabs that will make their way up there as well. So they're called ghost crabs because you only see them at night. That's when they come out. So, am I missing other creatures that might be out there?
We do have some snakes that live in the dunes as well. One, actually, we have that species in our herpetarium, and that's the coachwhip, which is actually one of the fastest snakes on land. It moves very, very quickly. And it is a sand snake.
And it's fastest in the way that it moves,
Correct.
not the way that it would strike. So there's a difference between the fastest snake.
Along those notes, sometimes I know kids will ask about whenever we were at the mud pit. As we were walking through the water, we saw a lot of different animals. We saw the mussels, we saw the fiddler crabs in the marsh. But are the animals that actually live in the mud pit?
Yeah, there are animals that live in our mud pit here at Barrier Island, which is part of the reason that we want you to wear shoes when you go to the mud pit. It's not just to make sure that the mud doesn't suck your shoes off your feet, or to protect your feet from stepping on maybe those mussels or oysters. In the mud pit itself, we do have some residents. We have some fish that live in the mud pit, and occasionally we'll be in the mud pit splashing around, and the fish will get splashed out of the mud with us. So that does happen. But the reason for certain we want you to wear shoes is because we do have blue crabs in the mud pit. And so they're not going to want to bother you if they hear a bunch of giants splashing around and coming towards them. They're going to want to get out of the way, but they are there. And you want to protect your feet. You don't want to accidentally step barefoot on a blue crab. That would not feel very good. So we do have blue crabs in the mud pit. It's one of my favorite things to see.
And Alex, I think we're gonna end on this question. Can you tell us about some of the trees that you may find out in the back dune area besides palmettos?
Sure, yeah. So once you get to the back dune, that's starting to transition into our maritime forest, which is a totally different ecosystem. But in between those two zones, you're going to have some pioneer species. So they're the ones that make that transition from this dune area that has like a lot of salt and wind exposure to an actual forest that has a lot more protection to offer its residents. And so some of those species would be your loblolly pine, which actually, those trees normally grow pretty fast and they can get very tall very quickly. But for the ones that are actually near our dunes, that salt spray actually reduces their ability to grow quickly. So you might have a 50-year-old loblolly pine that is only about 2 stories tall, while the same 50-year-old pine that's in the back of our forest that's well protected would actually be closer to 4 to 5 stories tall. So that salt spray takes a lot of energy away from the tree to grow. So that'd be one of those. We also have cedars that do really well out there. They can handle that salt and that heavy wind that comes off of our estuary. And then we also have myrtles that grow out there. They're kind of a smaller tree that fills in like the lower landscape. And so between those trees, they kind of provide the extra cover for even some of our smaller plants. And one of my personal favorites are cactus. We have a prickly pear cactus. And then we also have a devil's knuckle or a devil's knee, which has like the fun little needles on them for our cacti that are out there as well.
Wear
you don't want to step on those, of course. Yeah, wear shoes. But they are really cool to see out there. Those are our 2 native species of cacti that are out there as well.
Huh. And we got to see one of those cactuses yesterday, right? We got to see the prickly pear cactus in our video.
Yeah, they have those bright yellow blossoms, and then they'll have a fruit on them that comes later. And then if you peel the skin off, then you get to eat it.
I had no idea that you could eat that. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, ladies, do you want to let them know about our class that we're having tomorrow?
Yes, I'll be teaching entomology tomorrow, which is a study of insects. So we're going to learn a little more about those creepy crawlers that normally freak us out, and some of the benefits that they have for our ecosystems and why they're important. So join us tomorrow at 11 for that. And of course, if you have any more questions about our Let's See class, or really any questions from any of our previous classes, just leave them in the comments and we'll be happy to answer them.
All right, that's it for us.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Hi.
Have a beautiful day.